corrected version.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, maybe when, since the camera's on. Hello. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, as usual. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
No worries.
Gary, maybe you want that?
I have one.
Okay, they sent it to
I
everybody.
guess so, yeah. Good to go? All right. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Board of Water Wastewater Commissioners at the Harwich Water Department, 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. On Thursday, March 9th, 2023 at 11:30. Do you have any public comments, announcements? Nothing? A motion for the consent agenda for minutes of January 26th, 2023 and February 16th, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, on the minutes of January 26th, on page 2, under B, well 10 update.
Yes.
And it has a sentence there, we received a letter from the M on the 10th. Something didn't quite make it there.
Where are you, Alan? Oh, in the middle of the paragraph?
In the middle.
I can adjust that.
Yeah.
So that was DEP?
Yeah.
Okay. 9.
I also have one on the 26th, for the 16th. On the last page, on where we voted for fertilizer, it says that the vote was 202, and I believe that should be 220.
Okay.
Okay, because it was 2 for and 2 against. I
Okay.
think 202 means we abstained, which we didn't. Thank you. So I'll second that with those corrections.
I think I wasn't here that day.
You were,
Yeah.
you were wrong.
Yeah, I didn't go that far.
The applicant was disappointed.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on to abatements for 65 Southwest. So it seems that they're looking for a $50 abatement for a service call.
It's actually 200.
Right. That's
They only want to pay 50.
So they had a leak. A neighbor saw the leak and contacted the water department. We went out, shut it off, charged them for a service call. They live in Florida, and they didn't want to pay the service call.
So it was an after-hours service call,
Yeah.
and our after-hours rate is $200.
Okay.
During hours is $50.
But so they understand they had a leak, and we
Yes,
shut
they
it
did.
off.
Yes.
Okay.
So we responded and we shut it off.
Okay.
So it was just a routine after-hours service call.
Okay.
Did they understand they had to pay overtime for these guys?
They felt it was excessive because they didn't feel it was strenuous work.
Right. So there was no service was given. So Noreen.
On the account, there is the charge emergency for 200, but then there's something called Service Lab for $50. Is that unrelated?
That was another service call. We went out for another service call. That was during hours. So the one that they're contesting is going to
Okay.
be after hours.
And they know it's after hours.
Yes.
Well, they didn't make the call. The neighbor made the call to go out.
Correct, because they don't live here.
Right.
So, yes, it's very similar to when we had that cold snap and people's services were
Right.
bursting left, right, and center. We responded to, 40 calls that weekend.
Right.
And they were charged the same.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So they shut it off, and the people wanted to turn it back on, right? That's what,
No, they don't want to pay $200 to have the thing shut off. They think that $200 is excessive.
I believe they're just contesting the cost of the after hours.
oh, okay.
I would just note that the reason that value is $200 is because contractually when someone is called in on overtime, it's a 4-hour minimum callback.
Right. Right. Nori?
So what would happen if my neighbor called and said, water was pouring out of my faucet and I wasn't around, and you guys came out and in fact it was coming out of a window, or, I'm irrigating an arboretum, how much would a person be on the hook for what their neighbors thought should be done, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I guess if we went out and it wasn't a leak, it was
Yeah.
just you're
Whatever.
pushing a hose out the window
Yeah.
for a good old time. I guess I don't want to misspeak. Wellesley
Yeah,
does the billing, but if we don't perform an action,
yeah.
We wouldn't charge. If it
So,
was something that...
did we shut it off at the street? Is
We
that-
did. We went to the spigot and tried to shut off the spigot, and it was still dripping.
Oh, okay.
And then they went to the street and shut it off at the curb.
Oh,
And shut the
okay.
water off to the house.
Yeah.
So what we're supposed to do, like, just leave it
Sure.
dripping? And
After they finished everything, then we had to turn it back on.
yeah.
And it was night.
Yeah, it was after hours.
Yeah, but on the 13th, they turned it back on, left it on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was left on, and the faucet was still leaking, then they went back to turn it off again, right?
No. So they went out to the house
Yeah,
and tried to turn it off at the spigot,
Mhm.
and it was still dripping. They
Right.
turned it off at the curb.
right.
So there was no water going to the house.
Right.
Then the homeowner, correct me if I'm wrong, called and asked to have the water turned back on at the house. That's why we went back out, to have the water turned back on. And that's the $50 charge,
Yes, different day,
different day.
Oh.
during hours.
So they were being $200 for the emergency shut-off,
Right.
which
Okay.
they feel as though was excessive. So,
Make a motion to deny.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, water restrictions and bylaw. So, Noreen, do you want to have a little discussion with this? I know you and Judith were there with Dan, Giorgio, Wellesley, Tracy, and Sandy were all there?
Sure.
Georgia was not there.
I'm sorry, Giorgio was not there.
Giorgio was
Okay, apologize.
So, we've spent a long time on this, and we're probably back at the beginning, but, sometimes the best decision is not to make a decision, so. When we met, just for background, we had wanted the system where if we were gonna put a fine on a customer, the fine could go directly on their bill and not have the complicated, timely process of having to go through district court and issue tickets, just like the police, the beach, and others do. We wanted a different system. And, at first Giorgio didn't think the legislature would pass it at all. Apparently, it's not something that he had ever heard of being done before, bearing in mind that most water departments do no enforcement. That's part of our problem. We're sitting in the middle of a desert where Chatham, Orleans, Brewster, Dennis, Yarmouth do no enforcement. So we constantly get people saying, either get everybody or, don't do anything. So unfortunately, the procedures that Giorgio devised for allowing us to put charges directly on the water account was so cumbersome, and he wanted to insert an extra hearing beyond our normal abatement hearing that anybody can come to and we can deny. Commissioners were willing to do that, but as we talked with the staff, it was decided that even with commissioners sitting at the hearings, all the paperwork still has to be prepared, all the, if we have seasonal help or whoever still has to go out and take certain data off the meters, it's a very complicated process that he wanted to insert in our procedures. And frankly, we decided that we'd rather stay with the traditional ticket system, same as police, speech, and others for the moment anyway, because the system that he was proposing was actually almost worse than the ticket system. So, and maybe we can improve on that. So I believe, so that's to get people up to where we were.
Okay.
Did I properly?
You did.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to add? I know you were there too.
No, I think,
Okay.
sorry,
All right.
hit it.
So,
So with that said, then we're going to go all the way back to our conversations last August, September, and what we'd be proposing for this May town meeting would be one article simply to change the antiquated amounts that are in the bylaws, which are $50 and $100 for first and ongoing offenses, to 100, 300, which is what is reflected in our regulations, and just to bring them up to, what it should be. I mean, the amount of work is incredible, particularly, and the district court doesn't even want the $50 fines. It's just too much work for that kind of money. So one bylaw we're suggesting is to do that, to just correct the amounts. The second bylaw, and that's the reason we talked about having it as a second bylaw change, because it will cause a lot of attention, will be adding the wells to the people that we can enforce restrictions on. So one of Gary's and other people's suggestion was make it two separate bylaws, so we get our simple increase in prices that I don't think anybody's going to object to, and then we can have the town-wide discussion of should we or should we not add wells to our area of control.
well, it'll be two separate articles that we voted on.
Correct.
Well, we have that's down a little further, the articles we have going to town meeting. So, anything else in regards to the water restrictions, the bylaw and the legislation that we have right now that we're looking at, that's been revised for I don't know how many times?
Well, what I have in the packet identified is really the changes that we would need, for each article. I did a draft of changes to accomplish increasing in fines, and then a separate document reflecting amendments to enforce over private wells.
Right.
I tried to keep them simple as possible, as to not rewrite the whole bylaw.
Okay.
I went through them, I was fine with them, other than we're just missing one
Oh,
piece.
which I have. Apologies. Thank you.
So the one that was in our packet,
This one?
Yeah, you got that one.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
the one that was in our packet was the one that applies to adding wells to our authority. This one that's just being handed out was the one that simply changes the dollar amounts from 50, 100 to 100, 300. So I'm assuming that's, so it's really, do we want to go ahead? This is our time when we vote later with the well issue.
So this is what we'll be presenting.
So I wanted to have this conversation with the board, just to recap the group meeting we had internally, get the board's thoughts. If this is the direction we'd like to go, I would put this back in front of Giorgio for his, blessing, if you will, and then go from there, just in case there's any legalese that I may have overlooked.
All right, any questions regarding the restrictions bylaw?
I'm good,
All right.
I'm good. I think that's a good idea. Put it back before Giorgio. Let's see what he comes up with.
All right. Take care of this one.
I think it's great separating out the two. so the conversations don't get muddied, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
All right, anything else for that, Dan? Nope. All right. All right, on to new business, wastewater budget and retained earnings contribution.
All right. In the packet is an updated wastewater budget based upon discussions that occurred at the joint budget hearing with the Board of Selectmen and FinCom over the weekend, as well as an additional meeting I had with the finance director and town administrator to reconcile all the changes we discussed that Saturday. So, I can start by handing this out.
I'm sorry. Want to give Mike one?
You want to do yours?
I have an extra one.
All
I'd
right,
be
just
happy
checking.
to.
All right, just checking.
I had a memo.
All right.
Dan and I talked about this.
All right, Dan.
Alright. So, the biggest changes with respect to the wastewater budget are captured within the OFIS or indirect expense line item. The discussion at Saturday's meeting, we had included a salary enhancement of service of $80,000 for the assistant wastewater superintendent. What we did not capture in our original budget projections were the indirect costs, which equal 20, I believe it's $28,000 or $27,181. So that's an increase over our original request of $31,687. Beyond that, one of the things I wanted to go over was, with the handout I just provided, just capturing our total FY24 wastewater budget, and to let our discussion about a potential for retained earnings contribution to offset our FY24 expenses. So, as I mentioned at Saturday's meeting, kind of the standard that we here hold internally and what's been relayed to us during our various enterprise fund workshops and things of that nature is that we should be reserving a minimum of 25% of our operating budget in our retained earnings balance. So what I identified at the top of the spreadsheet is our true operational expenses. So that's indirect expenses, salaries, wages, and our operational expenses less debt. So those total line items equal $680,558. Taking 25% of that would look us seeking to keep $170,000 in our retained earnings account. We had 2022 certified retained earnings in the amount of $277,550, and a request that I discussed with the town administrator and finance director, a subsidy amount of $105,181. So if we do contribute in that amount, it would leave us with $172,369, which is just above our 25% minimum threshold that we're trying to keep. If we want to break there, or...
Well,
Noreen?
just so we don't get confused, where you have 2022 certified sewer enterprise, that's actually 2023. It's just government speak, okay, just so we... and I made some statements on Saturday about how much we should keep. I was happy with 50, but having rethought it all over and we're all in the same boat, I'm happy. I would support the 105,000.
So just building off the 180, or the 105,000, if you look to the bottom of the table, I just summarized what would be proposed as funding sources to meet our full operating budget at town meeting. So the total operating budget, including debt, is the $1.9267 million. We'd be looking for a general fund subsidy of $1.015 million, would be looking to reappropriate anticipated FY '23 wastewater debt in the amount of $857,446, sewer retained earnings contribution 105,181, and then sewer receipts in the amount of $15,000 to balance our FY '24 budget.
All right. Any questions?
I'm curious, it's not a really, with a new enterprise fund of this type, or any type, for any town, at what point, is it like a 5-year horizon where it's no longer considered necessary to support, or is it just more down to whatever the dollars are? I guess my question is, you know, the retained earnings on the wastewater side of 105, why would, it's just a theoretical question,
Yeah.
why would it not be looked at as a, almost like a startup for 5 years, so that it wouldn't go this back and forth? In other words, why wouldn't that money just be kept whole?
The
Why would
retained earnings,
money-
why would we?
Why would be putting money back into the general fund if it's,
Well, it's
if
not
we're
going
not
to the
there yet?
general fund. It's appropriating it from our sewer retained earnings into the sewer operating budget.
okay, so, all right,
And I guess, I think it,
that was, okay.
is that,
That makes it clear, thanks.
and ultimately, whatever monies we have within our sewer enterprise fund is the result of turnbacks from the general fund subsidy that funded us to begin with.
I thought it was going back and forth,
Yeah, not
and that
back and
seemed
forth. Yeah.
redundant. Okay, thank you.
All right. Nobody's happy, moving on.
That's
But
right.
I do think it would be appropriate to
Vote now?
vote on the revised wastewater budget, as there is some differences between what the board's previously voted and discussed with FinCom. I know FinCom is meeting tonight to go through changes, you know, based on Saturday. So I'd like to, if the board votes, articulate that tonight to them so that these are hard numbers, if you will.
Are you going to the meeting tonight?
I'm gonna plan to log in.
All right.
I move that we approve the wastewater enterprise fund budget in the amount of $1,992,677.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Can I go on?
Yeah.
Okay. He said okay. I would move that we approve an appropriation of $105,181 from wastewater retained earnings to the FY '24 wastewater budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Noreen?
I move that we approve a reappropriation of $857,446 from our wastewater enterprise FY '23 budget, which I lost it, 857,446 represents an excess in the debt amount that was allocated for FY '23. So I move that amount, that excess in the debt from FY '23 wastewater be reappropriated towards the estimated debt for FY '24 wastewater.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's all I got.
Well done.
Battle.
Anything else, Dan?
Wastewater.
All right, FY '24 budget, water budget.
All right, I have updated packet items to hand out. Take one and pass it down. This is a 2-page.
Where's this one?
Yeah.
Who's this at?
Yeah, you take 2 and hand them down. Perfect.
Just one thing?
It's a 2-pager.
Oh. Yep. Sorry.
Should go to that.
You guys
So there's been, everyone's ready? There's been one change to the Water Enterprise Fund budget for FY '24. If I can bring your attention to the second page, the last 3 columns or rows on the expense, the mature principal, long-term debt, interest, and admin fees. In the munis budget, well, I guess, looking at the principal debt number, you'll see that went up from FY '23 of $396 to an FY '24 amount of $404,300. When we had originally submitted our budget, the debt figures were populated by someone else. We're not quite sure who filled those numbers in, but they were not populated by us. That said, I reached out to the finance director yesterday to try to unpack, because one of the numbers, the admin fee on long-term debt, went from $2,095 last year to in excess of $24,000 this year. So to try and dig in and unpack that, what I found was going back up to the principal debt line item, last year Carol had charged an additional debt payment to the Water Enterprise Fund in the amount of $6,121. That reflected a principal payment for a loan that was taken in 2004 prior to the conception of the Water Enterprise Fund. We have not historically paid that debt. We've never paid it since the 2004 note was bonded. Carol, for the first time last year, without our knowledge, charged that debt to the Water Enterprise Fund. I wasn't here when the Enterprise Fund was developed. I don't know what conversations were had between the Water Commission at the time and the town with respect to how pre-existing debt would be handled, whether that would retain on the tax roll or whether it would be shifted over to the Water Enterprise Fund. That still all needs to be unpacked. I guess the good news in all of that is 2024 is the last payment of that 2004 debt for that project. So it's not going to be something that we continue carrying forward. I think we still need to understand exactly what and why it happened, but that is the cause for the increase from what we had submitted in principal payments on our FY '24 budget to what you now see in the packet is the $404,300. If you look at the munis budget for the admin fee for long-term debt, you'll see a number, can I cheat on here with you? Of $24,138. I wasn't able to determine where that figure came from. In reviewing all of the water department's debt schedules, I have since instructed the finance director to reduce that from the $24,138 down to $1,963, which is our total known administrative debt fees. So that is a reduction in that line item. So those are the changes, if you will, to the water budget.
Where is that one? Sorry.
If you look at the same line item on the munis budget and compare them side to side, you'll see
Okay.
what was entered in munis, and then, actually just before the meeting, I was on the phone with the finance director and was able to get her to adjust that 24,138 down to the 1963, which is now reflected in your packets.
So we had a line item for $6,000 that we've been carrying that hasn't been paid?
No, the debt payments for the 2004 Clean Water Trust loan have never been paid from the Water Enterprise Fund. Last year, unbeknownst to us, was the first year that that debt was charged to the Water Enterprise Fund. We didn't receive any notice that this was a new debt payment that we should be accounting for, which is why we didn't include it when we built our FY24 budgets, because this all happened kind of behind the scenes.
Okay.
So now it's a new $6,000 principal payment that we're seeing.
But we're not gonna carry it forward after this year?
This is the last payment on the loan.
Oh.
So it's a 20-year loan from 2004, so 24 is the last payment.
So we haven't been making a payment on it for 20 years, but the last year we're making a payment on it.
The water department has not. The town has, but
Right,
the water
right.
department has not yet.
Okay.
Do you know why it switched?
Why it switched?
Well, yeah, why?
My best speculation is when the Water Enterprise Fund was adopted, there's a large amount of chargebacks, our indirect expenses, that come, that we never had to pay for before out of our operational budget. I believe at the time the Enterprise Fund was created, there was, I kind of want to say a handshake deal, but there was some arrangement where the town was going to take it easy, if you will,
Yeah.
with respect to the indirect expenses as the Sewer Enterprise Fund became up and running. Now, we've had probably 5 or 6 finance directors since the Water Enterprise Fund was created, and what happened through that transition period, I can't say, but Carol did identify this as a debt that she felt the water department should be paying, and did charge it to us last year.
So what happened was when we initially started the enterprise fund, we had nothing. We were on the tax rate. So to get through that period where there's some kind of principle was carried, all of that debt was carried by the town.
Right.
It just strikes
Sorry?
me as odd that the last year, do you know?
Right, well, the last 2 years, yeah.
Last 2 years, yeah.
Well, the thing of it is, actually, I thought it was all paid off. I didn't realize there was still something.
Yeah,
Not a bad thing.
that's out there.
Anything else? Noreen? John, good? Good. All right, thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Oh, also, sorry, that you'll notice also, if going back to the salaries and wages, the enhancement of services has been reduced out based on the town administrator's comments on Saturday.
Motion.
Go ahead, Noreen.
I move that we approve the water enterprise budget in the amount of $4,534,379.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Noreen?
If you look on the munis report, at the very top line, you'll see, on the OFIS line, you'll see, the original budget was $759,278, and then there was a revision to the budget that moved it up by $300,000 to $1,059,278. It's an even $300,000. What caused that, in a nutshell, was one of our articles, this article was from last May, and it was to create a ready supply of money with the infrastructure bill coming in, so that if opportunities came up, we would have money readily available on the water side for design for projects, so that we would always be ready to get in line and not have to wait a full year to a town meeting to do that. Actually, those opportunities didn't come along this year. They came in different ways through the Clean Water Trust and SRF and other things. And the other coincidence was that, however that was booked, it was added into our department. It wasn't maintained as a separate article, which was the intention of the article. It wasn't an article. So we have a surplus, 300,000 in our enterprise fund line. So Dan, in looking everything over, had suggested rather than, so if we just leave that there, and, you know, we could encumber it, that would be messy. It would drop off June 30th, and we would have to reappropriate it, you know, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. So his suggestion is that for our project that is 600,000, is it, for well exploration?
Yeah.
That we already, you know, it's been on the capital plan, it's been planned. So I'm gonna move that this 300,000 be reappropriated to pay for half of the estimate for, sorry guys.
New well source exploration. You looking for that?
FY '24? Right here.
Yes, for the FY '24 new well source exploration phase 2 with a cost of 600,000. I move that we appropriate 300,000 from that line to go towards that $600,000 cost. I didn't say that very well.
I got it.
We got it.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
That doesn't need to be before the vote, but just had to want to piggyback on.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, just to build on what Noreen said, you know, we had funded this article in hopes that we would be able to design a project that fit within the priorities of the federal infrastructure bill funding. DEP's expressly stated that their priorities at this point are small and low-income communities. They are PFAS mitigation and lead service line replacement. Now, while I'm grateful and fortunate that we haven't had any bad PFAS incidents and we don't have lead service lines, that also makes it difficult for us to rank high enough in the SRF program to be eligible for funding. So we have this 300,000 sitting out there where I don't believe we're going to have projects that necessarily meet their priorities. I think it makes sense, instead of tacking another 600,000 out of our water retained earnings, it will lower that transfer that we'll be looking for in the spring.
All right. Next up, we have the FY24 water, assistant water superintendent. That's a typo, it should be wastewater, so we're gonna hold off on that till our next meeting. And next we have is the 2023 annual town meeting articles.
All right, so I wanted to put this together for myself, also for the board, just with all the budget talk, and as we're getting closer and closer to town meeting warrant time, just to kind of recap what our asks were going to be, or what we could be called to the floor on in May to speak about. So one thing I wanted to bring in was an updated cost estimate on a Route 28 water main replacement project. So that cost, the most recent cost estimated has escalated to $17.5 million. Now, there's a couple disclaimers I need to throw out there with that number. We are still waiting to convene with Mass DOT to compare notes as to how we should be pricing the project. Because DOT is going to be the prime entity overseeing the project, it's their project. They have unique standards to DOT as to what's included in the cost per linear foot of pipe installation, where ours is broken out where we're looking at a unit price for pipe, unit price for subgrade underneath the road, a unit price for trench patching, so we itemize things and they account for it somewhat differently. So we do need to have a meeting with DOT to reconcile, unit costs and make sure that we're both on the same page. One thing that I would throw out, I received a correspondence from Mass Water Works with respect to congressional community project funding applications. They are now requesting or receiving community project funding applications, more commonly known as earmarks. So I have started to make contact with the appropriate people to see if we can get on Congressman Keating's earmark list for the FY24 budget in hopes that we can get this project funded for free. But I don't want to be too optimistic as to how those things go, but I am trying to work that avenue as we keep moving forward. Another change or new item on the town meeting article list is a utility easement at 129 Route 28. It was my hope as we were coordinating with Mass DOT that they would allow us to use their easement that they're taking for drainage purposes to also accommodate our water main work, but they recently reached out and said you should go get your own easement. So I have reached out to the property owner at 129 Route 28. They were more than open to granting us an easement and were fine with the project, but I did put in a cost of $10,000, basing that really on kind of what we've paid for easements on the wastewater side of things in case there is compensation that needs to be provided, but we will need to obtain town meeting authorization to negotiate that easement.
All right. Any questions about the water articles? Noreen?
So, months back, we voted the capital plan. Do we have to vote to approve these articles? What do we have to do here?
We've already voted on the articles.
Okay. So just saying, we're gonna have an awful lot of articles in May. I mean, that was 5 with the reappropriations, and unless these get grouped, into like wastewater capital articles or water capital articles, there's another 7 more. So that's 12.
It'll be 4 nights.
You think we'll get done in 4 nights?
We're hoping to group by funding source, which we're going to have that conversation
Right.
this week.
Maybe our capital articles can be grouped, at least make those 2 out of 7.
That's how my town does it, certainly streamlined.
We're over 75 already.
Articles?
How many petition?
I don't have that amount count yet, but I think there's 6.
Oh, that's not bad. Plus the bylaw
Right, I
article.
should note that this does not include non-cost items like the bylaws and other things we're proposing to do. This is just the capital.
Oh, that's right,
articles.
those 2 too, excuse me,
Right.
2 more. And plus with the bylaw articles, they have to print so much for lousy little change. Okay. Yes, we already voted.
I don't think we're doing too bad.
Hmm?
I don't think we're doing too bad.
14 articles?
I can remember years with 14 articles.
Well, that's just us though. Yeah.
I think we're doing good.
I guess perception is.
It's the price on them that's scary.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about the bylaw articles and $50 million and $17 million. But
I can't remember when the water department had 14 articles just laying water main, but not for those numbers.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
That's scary numbers, millions.
I can't believe it, to be honest with you.
Well,
Cost escalation.
when we priced that Route 28 project, what was it, $7 million?
That's what we were.
Yeah.
$7.5 million. That was
Yeah.
I based that
2016?
off of, so when we did the Lower County Road project, the average at the time was $1 million a mile for water main replacement. So when we got to conceptualizing Route 28, that's 2 miles, I kind of escalated to 7 million to carry some extra weight there just in case cost escalation, but that, I mean, has just spiraled out of control.
You know, after all these years, you never know where you're gonna turn up either.
Yeah.
It gets very scary. Okay.
And I guess one other thing, well, on the next subject.
Well, I was gonna have you mention too, just the reason that we're doing that much of Route 28 is because DOT is repaving from Herring River to the Dennis line, and once they do that, you can't cut that road for 2 years. So you might as well jump on board and piggyback off of them if they can do most of the excavating and get that pipe in the ground. I mean, I was gonna say it was a couple $1 million, but it wasn't.
And there's been discussions recently at the selectman level, there's been, I don't know what the right way to put it, there's been inquiry into the Route 28 DOT paving project. Whether it's to delay it, to try to change it. I still need to follow up with the SRF folks as to what implications that potentially has on our project. It's been explained to me previously, not directly by them, but it's been said that if you're listed on the intended use plan and you back out of a project, it looks unfavorable from the Clean Water Trust perspective. So we may have some pivoting to do or bigger discussions about what happens with the dry sewer pipe. The water main is less impactful because it's not state funded, but if we do end up pushing or delaying the DOT project out, I need to get in touch with SRF to see where and how that will play in. Also with DOT, if they're going to push the project out, we may still be able to go in and do our work in advance of DOT, you know, as a separate project, but we're not going to capture as much savings by doing it as a separate standalone project than under DOT's umbrella. So there's some pending discussions, but.
Noreen?
I don't want to get into the weeds on the individual project, but did you say the Board of Selectmen were interested in pushing it out, or DOT?
No, I don't believe it was either of those two parties. I
Okay.
think it was a private resident, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a resident inquiry into the project about potentially changing it. Where that goes, I'm not
So
sure.
no for today, yeah.
The stakeholders are not convinced that the plan that we've all talked about is the plan that DOT is moving forward. But DOT has been great in getting back to and setting up meetings with those residents. So at this point, there really is nothing that's going to slow that down.
Right.
Because DOT really is cooperating. So we're hoping we don't get to that point.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that we would vote to get to that point.
Yeah.
Based on a few things that are missing out of the plan, but we'll see how it goes.
All right.
Okay.
Wastewater, Dan.
Was that
Wastewater?
wastewater?
We going to wastewater?
Oh, wastewater, oh, I'm not, sorry. Yeah, so wastewater projects, we have the Phase 3 wastewater collection system. We're gearing up tentatively to present to the Board of Selectmen on Monday with an update on the variety of wastewater projects we have ongoing with GHD, one of those being Phase 3. There's been a number of things we're working through with respect to, you know, trying to shallow up pipes. We have the high-pressure gas main on Route 39, which is going to limit how deep we can go, so we're working through, and it's still very much in design. But what we talked about this morning, and what I expect to be discussing on Monday, is we have our SRF listing on the intended use plan in the amount of like $48,006,000 or $800,000. In conversations with Joe, we had put in a placeholder carrying number of 50 million, understanding that while we're in design, those numbers can certainly change. Where we're at right now is since the last meeting we had with the selectmen, we have kind of re-added all the streets that were missing from, or cut out of phase 2, kind of rolling with that. If we're going past it, we need to pick it up. And obviously that has an impact on the overall project cost, so we're looking at structuring the bid so that we can have at least 1 or 2 contracts as a base bid beneath the SRF approved amount, and then potential add alternates on top of that. So if bids come in more competitive, we can do more, but we're balancing that right now. The Route 28 dry sewer main, our dry sewer pipe project, that number was also updated February 23rd in the $6.5 million figure. That does include an allowance for grinder pumps for properties along Route 28. That said, grinder pumps is likely going to be another discussion we get into on Monday. In essence, we're budgeting construction cost right now and grinder pumps costs as they are today. For example, phase 3 could be anywhere from 24 to 36 months of construction. While we may carry a number for grinder pumps today, it's unlikely that that will be the same number when we actually need to purchase them in 2 to 3 years' time. So we need to have a discussion about the right way to do that, whether we, acknowledging that the town is going to purchase the grinder pumps. Once construction is completed, we have another town meeting article so we can appropriate grinder pump costs at the current cost of them, instead of trying to bundle them in with the construction, but that's another discussion to be had.
All right.
As you do this, are all the stubs and all that included?
Yeah,
So that you don't have to touch the road surface at all?
correct.
Noreen?
Again, don't want to get into the weeds. Did you say the grinder pumps were included in the sewer pipeline?
In the cost of $6.5 million.
Okay,
At today, if they were to
Yeah.
be bought today.
right.
So the $6.5 million is to install the low-pressure line, all the
Okay.
stubs to the properties, as well as an allowance for grinder pumps.
So there's probably a grinder pump line in the 50 million as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
although, yeah,
I mean, now that that policy is
we,
kind of moving along, that will be in every project. as
that
we
was in the cost table I was reviewing with GHD this morning. However, based on kind of what I just laid out about maybe it's not appropriate to carry those costs today because
Yeah.
the cost is going to go up, we did back it out, but there'll be bullets and explanations for all that on Monday. And lastly, I would defer to direction from either the board, FinCom, administration as to if and how we want to handle adding the positions, creating the new positions, if the assistant wastewater superintendent position is determined to move forward, if that's kept within the operating budget or is a separate standalone article with a separate funding source.
The assistant position?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be out of, the retained earnings?
Yeah, well, it would be part of our operating budget, but I think there's a desire to, or there's been a lot of discussion about whether we have a separate article at town meeting for establishing a new position, or if it's carried within the budget. Right now, we're carrying it within our budget, so it depends on.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is we can put a request in for the position, but it comes down to the board to vote to put that position or go to town meeting with that position. So, we still need to come up with a salary, benefits, is it be a vehicle, like how is that all going to be funded and where's that going to come from?
So the funding, for salary and benefits is currently within our operating budget.
So that 80,000 includes salary and benefits?
Benefits is the 27,218,
Okay.
right below it. So the total all-in is 107,218.
Okay.
I do need to follow up with DPW. I understand there to be 2 cruisers that are getting rolled over this year. So I'm gonna see if we can't reserve one of those for an assistant, at no cost, ideally.
All right. Noreen?
So, just trying to understand the logistics, new department, new people. So, I mean, we've approved the budget that this is in. We could, or we could wait, you know, approve the concept of an assistant by this board. I guess then I don't know who's the final authority. Is it town meeting, or is it the Board of Selectmen, you know what I mean? And if it's in our budget, it's almost like it stays in our budget. It's already in there. But, you know, I feel like we should take an action right now to vote this number as our request to go forward.
I think you did, kind of,
By doing the budget,
the budget.
yeah, that's right.
So it's
I'll leave it
budgeted,
there.
and if it goes forward, we have the funding source. If it doesn't go forward, it
Yeah.
stays there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Board of Selectmen, like, you guys approve it or not approve it, and if you approve it, it goes to town meeting?
The ultimate authority, yeah, the Board of Selectmen could not approve it, but the ultimate decision will be town meeting.
Right.
It's
That's
gonna
right.
play out whether or not it's in the budget or
Right.
some desire to have individual articles
Yeah.
for new hires, some don't. So however we lay that out, town meeting will decide, but if town meeting decides the way we've done it for the past 10 years, they would have to amend your budget to take the position out.
I'm gonna speak for the board, so yell at me if you don't agree. In relation to that topic, as a board, the mechanics, I don't believe, are of great concern to us. You know, coming from a different point of view, that issue of presentation, you know, might concern individuals, but as a board, it is the Board of Selectmen's warrant, and we're happy to let it lay by whichever preference you folks decide.
I think the intent for me would be to agenda you and have a joint meeting where you can weigh in at our
Yeah.
meeting, but have Dan present why, have Dan present articles and why, have Dan present the bylaws and why. The bylaws are the interesting one, as you know, that where we get bogged down at town meeting is on bylaws.
Right.
So what we approve to finally go in that warrant will be interesting, because 75 articles and growing
Yeah.
is at least 3 nights. And last year we were 2 nights, but we were there until after midnight. So we've got a lot of work to do. We're starting this week.
Yeah.
So warrant begins this week, Monday night.
Again, my thought was, you know, we can vote to recommend the position. The board would take a position if they're gonna vote in favor or not. Same with finance committee, they can either vote in favor or not,
Right.
and leave it to the town meeting,
Right.
whether the town wants that position or not. And that's, I mean, how,
Yeah.
I think it's gonna, how it does play out, so.
Great.
Anything else?
Well, you know, I get troubled by this, because all of a sudden, sure, we've taken on wastewater, and all of a sudden, we still have one person.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you know, we're seeing the water side, you know, it doesn't get the attention that it has over the years, and that there should be an assistant. You know, somebody needs to come on and help him out.
And Alan, you make sure you're at town meeting so you can make that argument,
Yeah,
because that's.
and I definitely would.
Yeah, I guess that's
I'll
what's
be
gonna be.
right
Right.
And
Noreen?
I'm going to be behind Alan too, but we also, I think, have to point out to the public that water has had its own issues in the last year or two, you know, and, you know, it's, thank God for our checking and monitoring procedures that we have in place, but boy, now we're hitting the front pages on everything, so we really don't want to neglect the water side.
No, no way,
That's right,
no
Alan.
way.
We've talked about this for years, too.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's anticipated, and I think the public anticipates it. It's just piled on with everything else.
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
I think town meeting is going to scrutinize some of this.
Yep.
But I don't think that anyone can argue that Dan has
need to duplicate them,
All right,
replicate
okay.
them.
Rein us back
All
in,
right.
Gary.
Dan, do you have anything else for the articles? All right, let's move on. 28, Route 28 water main replacement project update.
I mean, we kind of touched on most of it already, but this is the updated cost estimate broken up into two contracts, one west of the river, one east of the river. You know, we're still carrying things in there, because we haven't met with DOT, but this is where currently everything resides.
And just real quick, we have thought about pushing that project back because of the cost about it. We've talked about it, but honestly, we just don't feel as though financially they're a smart decision to make, especially like we don't know what's going to be in a couple of years from now before we can open that road up again, and what kind of savings we could get following DOT. So,
And
that will be really interesting what comes out with those numbers from DOT.
what I want to throw out there too, right, is, yeah, we can garner some savings from Mass DOT, but the leg of this project that we came out of the gate with was east of Perrin River.
Right.
It's not the Mass DOT portion.
Right.
East of the rivers, we've had 6 breaks since I started. You know, that's the compromised portion of Route 28. Is the pipe any younger on the other side of the bridge? No, I don't think so, but it... Sorry. No, the oldest pipe, I think, is down at the end, you know, that we have. But it's not, it hasn't been as problematic for us. So, you know, if I had to pick one from a water perspective, I would say east of the river. But acknowledging that it's never going to be cheaper for us to do it on the west side of the river because DOT is going to own the paving and the construction oversight, and we're not going to have to do global fill, it would be stupid not to do it.
Right. Noreen?
Just real quick, would we ever go ahead with the east side and not the west?
We have to.
Okay.
Unless Mass DOT throws the whole project out the window,
Yeah.
would be the only instance that I would recommend
Okay.
against.
Part of it is the strip asbestos pipe.
Yeah.
Part of it is undersized, you know, during the war years,
Yeah.
cast iron, cheap stuff.
Probably some pipe discontinuity in there as well, Alan.
Yeah,
Oh, look at you.
there's-
Someone took a class. Wow.
It's only.
We're gonna get out of these numbers and get back to talking water.
All right, are we good with the Route 28 water main project?
Yeah.
Good. Billing update.
Thank you. The last time I provided a billing update, I briefed the board about a new billing company that we signed on, the town signed on with. And we have been working with this company since last year to develop our bills, and we, as of last month, we're about 99% completed with them. It was a long journey. Whenever there's change, you know, we try to anticipate the time needed. The company had a little lag time, but we got to 99%, and we were made aware from the company that the town terminated the contract. So we were just about there. So needless to say, it's necessitated a drastic change in timing on our part because we have a billing period coming up. We're reading this month, bills are supposed to hit the mail early April. So as a temporary measure, we have paired with another bill print company. They're based here in Massachusetts. And thankfully, the company, actually, the same team transitioned from the company we were using before they went out of business. So they're familiar with us, they're familiar with our forms and our files and our Munis database. So we've been working with them. They're trying to expedite as quickly as they can to transition the new files that we developed with the prior company because of wastewater. So there is a lot of implementation that has to be worked out, but thankfully they're already familiar with us. So the long and short of it is this is a temporary measure, and they have given us a quote. We decided to go with it because it's a a fair price at the moment until we or the town, we have to have that discussion about how we want to move forward, if it's going to go into bid again, and if we pair with the town with tax bills, water bills, or do solo. As you know, the treasurer just started on Monday, and the finance director's last day is today. So Megan Eldred mentioned that maybe all of us have to sit back down at the table to find out the best direction forward, because obviously this is a busy time of year for all of us, and we need to get our work done. So, but what we're trying to do is replicate what we developed with the prior company, because a lot of work went into that, and just transition it over so that it's as quick and efficient as possible, so that the customers don't notice the difference. So that's what we're trying to do at this point. So we anticipate keeping the billing schedule on schedule for the April quarter, and hopefully we'll get that done. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Noreen?
I wasn't clear. Did the company, the new company, did it go out of business, or did the town cancel it?
The town terminated the contract.
Okay, so is that company still in business?
Yes, they are.
I mean, would one of your considerations be to stay with them independently for a period?
We did take that route.
You did take that route?
No, we did not, based on, there were a few outstanding invoices that the town was still processing, left over from last year. And because of that, the company decided to put it to the side until those things were resolved. So instead of wasting valuable time, because our deadlines are coming up real quick.
Right,
And
okay.
the time needed to keep things going
All right.
forward, rather than, risk that hesitation.
Yeah.
And we've just found out that those invoices have been written out, I think, this week.
So just so I understand the status, they didn't go out of business, we canceled them, but they don't want us right now.
Sounds like they canceled us.
No, not necessarily. The town found something that seemed to be contrary with our bid. And even though the company, they sort of, I won't get into the particulars, but there was a bit of a gray area there between what the town found versus what the company claimed. So there were some growing pains there, I know from our side, as well as the tax side. So, the decision to stay, even though we were 99% there.
Right.
I did reach out to them and to see if that was a possibility, to just do a one run to keep it going forward. But because of where they're at with the town, we really didn't.
The only reason I ask is, I observed and heard you guys put a tremendous amount of time into that new company, so you hit all the bases that we just said, so that's unfortunate, the whole situation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Dan, superintendent's report.
I don't think I have anything else.
It's enough.
That's not a bad thing, it's not a bad thing. Commissioner's report, Mr. Thompson.
I'm good.
Ms. Donahue, Ms. Underwood.
I'm good.
Ms. Donahue,
I have 2 items.
go right ahead.
All right, so because we keep saying it everywhere, the Barnstable Septic Loan Program for people that are connecting has just updated their new program, which is called AQUIFund, capital AQUI, capital FUND, and you can find that on the Barnstable County website. And I don't know every detail as yet, it just came out, but there should be loans available for 0 to 2% for any people that have septic issues or any people connecting to the sewer system. So that's a wonderful thing. Second wonderful thing is that although I don't believe it's official, I believe it's in the governor's budget, that very complicated septic tax credit that used to give a maximum of $6,000 back over 4 years is now more than likely gonna be increased to 12,000. So that means if somebody's connecting with an average price of 12 to 15,000, they can pretty much, if they are the primary owner, this is not for second homes, the tax credit. There's other qualifiers too, but that's the most important one. And it's a complicated process. We'll try to get more information on it now that it's gotten so beneficial. So those are two wonderful things. Thank you.
Lori. Mr. Goff. So, Dan, one thing I forgot to ask, when we were going over the wastewater budget, and we were talking about the possible new position for assistant wastewater superintendent, do we budget for this, for our staff? Anything coming out of the wastewater budget for what they're doing here, Wellesley, Sandy?
I believe it's, Sandy corrected me on the percentage the other day, I think it's 10%?
That's coming out of wastewater?
Yes.
Okay.
We have salary and wages within the wastewater budget for the administrative staff as well as for our meter reading, because the meter reading is used to generate sewer bills, so there's, you know, a small percentage of water employee.
Okay.
What about you? We had you in the...
50/50.
Yeah, Dan's in there.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I saw yours, I wasn't sure if that was in there too. Okay. Next meeting. Mm-hmm. 23rd? That works for everybody?
I wasn't paid that one.
Okay. 22nd?
Good.
I have a dentist appointment.
Oh, sorry, Wednesday's good for you, for Friday,
Friday,
the
24th.
24th.
I'm, but we could do it first thing in the morning, otherwise I'm going up to my son's.
Alan, you got
School.
Pleasant Bay on the 23rd,
Yeah, the 23rd, 8:30.
8:30.
Yeah.
If we do ours at 11:30?
Oh, yeah, could do
We
that.
do, we do it at 11.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
11:30. Yeah, so Thursday, 11, does that work, the 23rd?
yeah.
11:30?
11:30.
Yeah. 11:30?
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
Can I just mention one thing?
Yeah.
So, without holding them to it, it sounds like a discussion on a lot of things, water and wastewater, might happen with the Board of Selectmen on the 20th, tentatively, just so.
Yeah, if that works for you, if it doesn't, give me the next date.
So what date is that?
Monday, 20th.
The 20th, that's fine with me.
And I'll get you on the front half of the agenda.
Ooh.
Lori likes to go around.
We're getting, yeah, you're right. We're getting spoiled, we're on the front of Saturday, so.
So that's at
Trying to be
7,
nice
is
today.
that, what time is that, 7:30
Yes.
6.
No, yeah, 6 o'clock, Alan.
or 6?
Meeting starts at 6, so you figure about 6:30, I'll get you on by 6:30.
Okay, all right.
Should we post that as a joint meeting?
I would post it.
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
make it a joint meeting,
Yeah.
so you can
Yeah.
all talk.
Yeah.
This is gonna be your first opportunity to sell this to the public, so
Yeah,
sell is the wrong word, but educate.
Well, actually, I mean, those devoted fans that we have of our meetings have been hearing about it for a year, so I prefer this.
Yes, it's-
I think I've
yeah.
seen as many as 7 views on ours.
We're blowing out over here.
On our TV views.
All right, so we're all set for our next meeting?
Yep.
Motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, will you send me all your updated budget documents?
Yeah.
My email, please.
Oh, you have, yeah, paper signed there? Okay.